Hello, hello. This is Dr. Anastasia Chopelas, the scientific healer. And today on Raise Your Frequency, I'm going to talk about how distance healing works. And it's from a quantum mechanical or quantum physics perspective, and how you can transcend separation to healing someone anywhere in the world. So, it's a question I get asked all the time, especially from people that are unfamiliar with energy healing and distance healing. And quantum science is actually stranger than fiction. And I'm just going to describe two instances to you of things that happen in the laboratory and in the physics world, and how that connects to distance healing and how it can possibly work from a scientific perspective. Because most people think it's out there and it's like woo-woo and it really doesn't connect to reality. But the fact of the matter is that reality is very, very strange. I mean, if you think about it, things that you know about all the time, like light and gravity, which are two of the fundamental things that we experience in this world. We stick to the earth and that our eyes see light and we can see things that are around us. But yet we don't know, as scientists, we don't know in detail how these actually work. So, we can describe, and one thing about that is that we can describe every detail of how light interacts with matter and how we stick to the planets and how different planets have different gravitational pulls and so on, and why. We know all the reasons, but we still don't know exactly how it works. So, what is quantum physics? You hear all the time quantum this and quantum that. It's quantum healing and quantum play and quantum whatever. It's like all people are throwing. There's the quantum university, and everybody is playing and bandying this word around, but people really don't know what quantum really means. So, quantum is like quantity. It means that there is a quantum is a discrete amount. And the reason why it was coined back in the early 1900s was that people were investigating what's happening with an electron on an atom. Like what is it doing on an atom? And when we started being able to investigate things at this kind of level, weird things started happening. And quantum was describing the action that I'm going to describe in just a moment of how it actually works, and that it's all about the behavior of tiny particles at the atomic or the subatomic level. And they don't do what large objects do. In fact, compared to what large objects do, their behavior is actually very bizarre. So if you think of a basketball doing the same thing that an electron does, it will really bend your mind. So the reason why quantum physics was first discovered, and one of the people that showed that it worked, was Einstein, and he actually got the Nobel Prize for this in 1905, and he shared it with somebody named Leonard. And what Leonard did was he did these experiments on the photoelectric effect, where he shined light onto metal and he got electricity. And it wasn't until Einstein came along and said that you had to have a certain amount of energy in terms of wavelength, not intensity, in order for the electrons to move, or in order for electricity to be produced using the photoelectric effect. And that's when it was first coined, that was quantum physics. And as people more and more investigated these phenomena, they found some very strange things, and especially when it came to the path of the electron around the nucleus. So first they had to discover what exactly the nature of an atom is, and they found that the nucleus was this really small, very dense, hard part in the middle with electrons moving around. So you may have seen old science fiction movies, or even if your old Atomic Energy Commission, it was always a picture of some protons and neutrons with the electrons moving around in very distinct orbits. But that's not how they work. And the way it actually works is that you have to calculate, you use a calculation to figure out what the probability of the electron appearing somewhere is. And that's when Einstein quoted the famous quote of God does not play dice with the universe. And that is that quantum physics, when you run the equations, you're actually calculating the probability of where an electron will appear. So now if I describe exactly, that they don't go in these circular orbits, instead they have these very distinct shapes. And these very distinct shapes include something that look like spheres or dumbbells, or, that are in different directions. And that's how the atoms can bind to one another in these very discrete directions. And the way it works is that the shapes that are produced are from the calculations of the distance of the electron from the nucleus. And the way we account for the distance is we have to account for the distance from zero distance all the way to infinity. So now if you imagine that every electron that is around every atom needs to be accounted for from 0 to infinity, what is that saying? That's saying that all electrons are actually able to interact with all atoms in the universe. So that means that we are all connected just by virtue of quantum physics. And the way it actually works is that until you find where the electron is, the electron exists in all space. It is actually a waveform that continues in all space. And if you've ever heard someone by the name of Amit Goswami talk, he talks about that. He's also a quantum physicist, and he's talking about how the spiritual world works and how quantum physics is exactly in line with it. But what I'm talking about is actually that this actually connects the way energy or distance healing works with the world in general. So now you have this electron that's this waveform that occupies all space or is infinite. So that means that every particle is connected to every other particle. And recently they've shown this effect called quantum entanglement, where you have a conjugation. They've done about 20 or 30 atoms so far, and these atoms are not connected by any obvious bond. They're floating separately, and there's 20 of them, and if you turn one, then at the same time the others rotate without any time lag between the rotation of the one and the rotation of the other. So that's showing that there is a connection that we have yet to discover, like somehow we have yet to discover. And so this is the first, is that we're all connected. Now the second is, how can we transcend the distance? How can we now, if I'm sitting here in California and I have a client in Australia, or I have a client I have one currently in Abu Dhabi, and I can speak to them on the phone, or even if I think of them, I can do healing on them. So how does one transcend that distance? Well, in the world of the quantum world, and you have this electron that exists in all space, but now you're looking for it around the atom, and then you get a spot. And now you do it again and you get another spot. And this is very confusing because you can't follow the orbit of the electron. You can only find where it is at any given time. So that means that when you detect it, it goes from a wave to a point. And this is also named the wave-particle duality of matter. So matter, electrons, and light also behaves as particles. So light behaves as particles, and particles can behave as waves, like the electrons and the protons and the neutrons. And we've demonstrated this many times. So by doing experiments of wave-like properties on particles and experiments of particle-like properties on waves or on light. So now we know that it works. So if it works one time, it works all the time, right? So now we have these particles and they blip in and out of reality without showing any direct path. And it's just like when you shine light on an atom, the electron moves from one probability sphere to another. It goes outer, it goes from in to out, and we can't trace its path. And how is that possible? So the prevailing theory is that it goes out of the current dimension into another dimension, and then it comes back. So if you think about it, it's actually transcending distance, right? It goes from one place to another instantaneously. And when it goes from one place to another instantaneously and everything is connected all the time, that means that the possibility of distance healing, in other words, me sitting here and you sitting wherever you are, that if I do some energy work, like I shift your energy field or I clean your energy field up, I bring you here in front of me, I've transcended the distance, and I work on you right here because this is our physical reality, right? So science actually shows you how energy healing can work at a distance. A lot of people think that you have to be in the same room, and that is not true. So one of the books that actually chronicles the entire history of quantum physics, I read it many years ago. It's an old book. It's still current, and it's called In Search of Schrödinger's Cat. And I have it right here. And I read this book. I will reread it because it's a really fun book, and it goes through and it describes all of these phenomena that I'm talking about in non-scientist terms. John Gribben was a scientist, and he wrote several books, but this one I think is by far his best. And we've provided a link for you to go and check it out for yourself. If anything, just look inside and see what's going on. But it's a really simple way to show you how all of these very bizarre phenomenon can be tied to how our world exists. And we have these energy layers that are on our bodies, and when we are conceived, we have an energy blueprint that is much larger than our body. And that energy blueprint, it likewise also comes from different dimensions, and it is connected into the physical world. So the physical world is just one of the many dimensions that's here. And these many dimensions have been a theory in physics for a very long time, but it's really hard for our 3D minds to wrap around the incredible possibilities that we have in the world, in the actual real world. And the reason why I know that we're connected through these dimensions is that I have a lot of friends that can actually see them, including my own daughter. And she very clearly drew pictures, and the pictures look like a DNA strand that was reaching into the various dimensions that are starting from us and moving outward. So this many-dimensional reality that physicists have contemplated and used theoretically and calculated is actually what we see as spiritual beings being in this particular world. And the other thing is that we know how to go from one dimension to another based on science. There are actual equations that show us how to go from three-dimensional time-space to a non-timed, only informational space. And that is just like reaching into that dimension. And those of us that do this regularly that go into those dimensions regularly know that you get this blast of information and it takes a long time to interpret it. So what I've talked about today are two things. One is that we're all connected, and two, quantum physics tells us that we can transcend distance in an instant. In other words, you can be here and show up over here in an instant, right? In the energy world. So let's see. And so I'm currently writing a book more about this particular topic. But what I want to tell you is that you all, because this is reality for all of us, you all can do the same things. You know that you're connected to everyone. You know that you can transcend distance and that you can heal yourself, and you can also heal your family members, your friends, your clients. Everybody has this ability to heal. And what I'd like to do is I've reserved time on my calendar to have a conversation because I'm opening up a comprehensive, full-blown healing program for you to be able to do all of this on your own. And because I'm a scientist, I've created a series of protocols to be able to, for you to connect and do all of those things that I can do. I've taught other people to do these things like processes in healing cancer, processes in helping people have more energy, get more sleep, heal chronic diseases. All of these things, I've helped them actually do this for other people, and the results are very rapid. So I have taught little courses like this before, but this is now a more comprehensive course, and based on the results from the other courses, I have developed a brand new program. And on top of that is that you get to learn how to build a six-figure and above practice based on solid business principles, because I'm really balanced, left brain, right brain, creative, and very methodical at the same time. So I've put those in. So there's a link for scheduling an appointment with me right there. And the last thing, I'm writing a new book, but I have some of those things written in my original book called The Diamond Healing Method, Get Healthy No Matter What Your Doctor Says. So before you take a jump, you might want to take a look. You can get it on Kindle for a few dollars and check it out for yourself. You can also get a hard copy, which gets you the Kindle along with it. And I wrote it a few years ago, but it talks a lot about the way I view the world as a scientist and how it can possibly work, and that there is a lot of demonstration that what I do actually works, like moving the needles when somebody is hooked up to a machine, moving the needles while I'm healing them. I mean, what I really need is to have somebody actually sit in the laboratory with me and show that. But for the most part, I have basically thousands of miracles that I've created. Miracles meaning conventional medicine couldn't touch it. I work with somebody and boom, changes happen. So when you're ready to work with me or to speak with me about this, I'm happy to connect with you. If you like this video, hit the like button below, share it with your friends, and be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.